Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and today I'm going to teach you my 5-step method for how to write a song. If you do enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Step 1 is to come up with a main idea. A main idea is really just a boiled down version of what your song is about. So if you're writing a song about being in love, your main idea would just be, I am in love. If you're writing a song about being sad, you would write, I am sad, and probably give a reason as to why you're sad. I'm sad because my heart is broken, or I'm sad because it is raining outside and I find that depressing. Really, whatever you want to write a song about is totally reasonable. Just pick something that really makes you feel something. For this video, I've written a song about writing songs. So my main idea is that anybody can be a songwriter. So once you've got your main idea down, you can move along to step 2. Step 2 is writing an outline. Outlines are a really useful tool as far as making sure that your song stays consistent and that you've got one specific tone throughout. So especially when you get to that point, usually around the 3rd verse where it starts kind of feeling like, writer's block is kicking in, you're not really sure what to write about, that's when your outline is going to really help you out. So this is the outline for my song. It follows a pretty typical pop song structure, so if you do want to use this structure, it's a really good place to start. You're also totally free to mess around with it, to take out sections, to add sections, whatever makes you feel good about your song, because it's your song. I'm leaving a copy of my personal outline in the description below, so if you want to follow along with me, or if you just want to use it for your own personal songwriting later, go ahead and download it. Once you have an outline in front of you, every time it says the word chorus, you can really just write whatever your main idea was. So if your main idea was, I'm in love, go ahead and write that where it says chorus. If your main idea was, anyone can write a song, that's exactly what you write. And as you can see, that's what I've done. So at that point, you already have the beginning of your outline done. Once you've added your main idea, every time it says chorus, you can start working on your verses. Your verses are really the part of the song that start to tell your story. So for instance, this is where you would start to elaborate on your characters and your plot and all of that good setting kind of stuff. Your first verse is where you introduce all of those ideas. In my song, I'm just introducing where I am, who I am as a character, a songwriter, and what I'm doing, which is of course writing a song. In verse 2, I start to expand upon that idea and I start to build a little bit of tension. Verse 1 and 2 are right next to each other in the beginning of your song, then pre-chorus and the chorus. So by the time you get to your 3rd verse, we've already heard the main idea, which means that when you get to your verse 3, what you're going to do is start adding either another element of the story, you can add a new character or a new kind of perspective. You can also resolve your story there, or seem to resolve your story there. Once you've gotten the hang of what your verses are all about, and really it's just a 3-act structure. So if you've ever done any other kind of writing, you can really just follow that concept, or just tell a story in beginning, middle, and end. Now you get to move on to your pre-choruses and your bridge, which are a little bit different because it's not so much about telling the story and it's not so much about summarizing. It's those little in-between bits. So for instance, in my song, I'm really just talking about what a pre-chorus actually is and does. Here I would write, what is a pre-chorus? So it sort of is like an introduction for your chorus. And then that part just gets repeated the second time. So whatever you put for pre-chorus the first time, you can just take that and write it again for the second pre-chorus. Pre-choruses are also a thing that doesn't necessarily have to happen in your song. So you can actually just nix that whole part if you don't feel comfortable doing it right away. Your bridge is a really cool part of your song because you get to use that to either shift away from what you've been talking about or summarize in a more climactic, epic way. So if your whole story was about finding love, this is either the part of the song where you start to talk about why love is the greatest thing you've ever known in your entire life. Or you can use this to say, sometimes I have doubts, or sometimes I really don't know what love is or what it means. So there are a lot of different ways that you can use the bridge to basically talk about your song in a different way. The bridge is also really cool because it's the only part of the song that has kind of a different chord structure or has a little bit different melodic and harmonic content, which means that you get to kind of go a little dramatic on it, which feels really fun. So now that you've done the lyric part of your outline, you can start adding chords, which is of course step 3. I've actually left a little section at the bottom of my outline where I've left little spaces where you can fill in what chords you want to use, and I've used C major as an example. So all that I've written there are the chords that fall in that C major category. So if I were writing a song in C major, I would probably use a lot of C, maybe G, A minor, and F. Hey, it's that 4-chord thing. So that's a really good option if you are just starting out. That's a really common chord progression and is in everything. If you want to go a little bit further than just using that kind of typical chord progression that you kind of find everywhere, you can use some chords that don't necessarily fall into that key. You can use maybe C, G, A minor, F minor, ooh, and then you've got this kind of creepy sadness that just sort of floats into your chord progression. So that's totally reasonable too. It is your song, you get to decide the chords. I'm going to release later videos talking about different chords, and we'll talk all about how to use keys and how to use different chords that don't fall into keys, all of that good stuff. So you can start by just playing some really simple chords and then just kind of see where it goes from there. Just think about what sounds good to you. It's also worth noting that if you are writing a sadder song, it's kind of nice to start in a minor key. A minor is a good example if you don't want to use any black keys yet. So since my song is on the happier side, I've chosen A major, which is a nice happy sounding key. Yay! So go ahead and experiment with different chords inside of your key. If you want to play around with chords outside of the key, go right ahead. From there, you can actually move on to step 4, the melody and the lyrics. Once you have your chord progression, you get to kind of play around with the different notes within each chord. So since I've chosen the key of A major, my song is starting on that A major chord, which has 3 notes. A, C sharp, E. So what I get to do now is I get to write my melody by starting on one of these 3 notes. So I can either start with These are not the only notes that I can start my song on, but they are a really good place to start. For this song, I have chosen as my starting note. And now I get to work on the lyrics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow my outline and start my song on that concept of introducing who the character is and starting the song that way. So I've started my song like this. I start to write at 2:30 on a Saturday. It begins with some words to a melody, and my piano keys click in time with the beat. So all that I've done here is introduce my character, tell you when this is happening, and give you some context for the broader story. Then I continue with the same exact chords, I just repeat them. So I do, as I continue the song, it keeps with this trend. The melody doesn't change, but the words are different. And then suddenly there's a change in intensity. And from right there, you can kind of feel that it actually picks up melodically. That kind of happens because you're getting intensity. You're actually physically going up at the end of that sentence. So at this point, because I've noted that there's a shift and a change, we can move right on to the pre-chorus, which goes like this. What is a pre-chorus anyway? All it does is lead us away from the verse into another place. And then you can see that I'm still starting to get a little more intense because it's a little bit roller coastery at this point. So here's my chorus, and you see that I'm starting on A, but instead of starting on the starting note of A again, which is where I started in my verse, I'm actually going to start on C sharp, that's my chorus. As you can see, it is my main idea, which was, of course, anyone can be a songwriter. I've just expanded on it a little bit. So now that I'm on verse 3, I get to add higher stakes and a little bit more tension. So I'm going to add, this is the part where my outline helps me out. Otherwise I would be stuck with not much to write about. I've done the hardest part already. Now the listener's ready. And then I get to go back to my pre-chorus. And at that point, I can just go pre-chorus and my chorus again. So you've already done the hardest part there. And now I get to do my bridge. Bridges are really fun, I think, because this is the part where maybe if you've been writing, starting on that A major the whole time, I've decided to kind of shift back to B minor. And I'm actually using a chord that I haven't used before in the rest of my song, which is this G here. So I'm gonna do, this is a D and then an A. So it's the same chords, just with one extra chord added in there for a little bit more flair. This section I'm also starting on the root of the chord, which here is B, because this is a B minor chord. So this is what my bridge sounds like. Sometimes the tone shifts, sometimes there are a million edits. Even I have days of writer's block and woe, but just keep at it and watch your smile lift. Let the song take you where you wanna go. So now we have basically our entire song already mapped out in front of us. So at this point, you get to go on to our final step, which is, of course, editing! Yay! So my song is not perfect. I wrote this like a day ago, and I'm just kind of getting used to it, which means that there are a bunch of sections that I don't even really like right now. So for instance, I rhymed Saturday with melody, right? Those are two words that don't even necessarily sound alike. So I can either keep those and just kind of stick to my guns there, which is totally reasonable and fine, or I can kind of make an edit there and just change up the lyrics ever so slightly. So for instance, I could change that to, I start to write at 2:30 with a cup of tea. It begins with some words to a melody. And then it's a more direct rhyme, which, you know, some people might like better. Slant rhymes are also totally fine. I think it's actually a really great way to just surprise your listener, give them something they weren't necessarily expecting. Once I edit my entire song, I actually get to play it for people, and that's the really fun part about all of this. So make sure that you don't always keep those songs to yourselves, show them to your friends, ask for constructive feedback. Just feel proud of yourself that you've accomplished something really big. And even if your song isn't perfect, it is all about practice, and you can do this. So I hope this video helped you out. If it did, please again give me a like, a comment, let me know what you've learned, let me know what you're going to use. And if you want to see more videos like this, please do subscribe. I am going to make so very many more. And I hope to see you again. Mwah!